Samson, good morning to you and to your listeners, and of course to my brother Samuel Okujeto and also to my brother Suli. I'm very happy that we get to bring some very important issues about journalists and the media in mainstream discussion. I believe every day you sit on air, but rarely do you get the opportunity to talk about matters that concern your folks. I would also like to use this opportunity to express the gratitude of the Ministry of Information to our stakeholders, the NMC, the GJA, GIBA, CSOs, academic institutions for their invaluable contribution to finding solutions to some of the key problems or issues that we are discussing this morning within the information sector. That being said, something I can only reiterate the fact that the regime we have in Ghana, especially after the coming into force of the 1992 Constitution, has been the best since the beginning of the 19th century, where we were first exposed to mass media of any sort. At least we know that we have moved from a system where we had only one TV, one radio, highly censored and controlled, to a situation whereby now under our 1992 Constitution, based on the fundamental guarantees, you don't even need a license to set up a media house in Ghana. That has really helped the country in terms of diversifying ownership and also, of course, the proliferation of media houses in the country, which has one of the widest spectrum in terms of numbers and reach, if you want to look at our West African sub-region in particular. But I believe some of these issues that have come up, of course, has been because of the rankings on the Press Freedom Index by Reporters Without Borders. And before I make my substantive submission, something, I want to remind us that if this conversation is about how to improve Ghana's performance on the Press Freedom Index, then we can never impeach the criteria that has been listed in the index. If the criteria list that economic context you perform 47%, I believe our work should look at how are we going to increase that performance to maybe 60 or 70%. If the criteria says political indicator is 61%, our conversation will be, what are the issues? How are we going to raise that numbers? We cannot legitimize the reports and then, on the other hand, impeach the criteria listed in that report and now attribute our own reasons for the performance of Ghana on the Press Freedom Index. I heard my brother Sule talk about the fact that, oh, the same criteria is used for other countries. Why are they doing better than us? Let me remind you that until 2021, the key indicators of the report included pluralism. It included your legislative framework, of course. It also had a component about safety. And on that basis, if you had taken a country like Niger that has only 15 media houses to Ghana that has over 400 media houses, by our share numbers, we will beat about 6 at least or 7 of the countries that are listed ahead of us, that we are now in the 9th position. But I believe it is in good faith that they realize that let us not look at the cosmetics, let us not look at just the numbers, but let's dig into the issues that affect the performance of journalists in the country. And that is why the change in criteria has now added social indicators, safety, which was there before, legislative indicator, political indicator, and economic indicator. So if we want to have any conversation, and even before we start to speak, they say, oh, government spokespersons are also raising issues about economic indicators, and they shouldn't even go there. And we are barred from talking about it. Let me assure you something, that we may even add 1 or 2 figures to the other indicators. But if we should come back in 2024 and the welfare of journalists have not improved, and the economic indicators are still at 47 or even lower, we may not perform any better. That being said, I share in the concerns that are being raised about Section 76 of Electronic Communications Act, and of course, the combined effect of Section 207 and 208 of the Act 29. Personally, I have expressed this point on several platforms and even on panels that I believe my brother Sule and I have shared. And my position has been that I believe civil remedies should be sufficient for dealing with false publication by any journalist. I believe so. I strongly believe so. That being said,
the state or state agencies do not have capacity to sue for civil remedies. When there is a situation where a journalist is clearly reckless and their recklessness threatens the state or an agency, what then shall we do if we repeal these laws?
Samson, I am coming to that. I was talking about my confidence in civil remedies in that angle. I'm now coming to the provisions specifically under the Criminal Offences Act at 29. Samson, if you look at the category that provision comes under, it talks about the breach of the peace. As a lawyer, my impression is that those provisions were not put there necessarily to refrain journalists or to stop the work of journalists. It applies to even civilians who publish false news. And look at the mega trends that we are experiencing globally and also in the case of Ghana. When we talk about publications these days, we are not even talking about only journalists. Now we have bloggers, vloggers, we have influencers, individuals whose clout and following and reach by their sheer capacity to distribute to masses beyond the borders of Ghana, whose reach are even bigger than maybe a half of the media houses in Ghana in terms of their market share. And these are facts. If you look at the share numbers of the performance of people who have millions of following on social media and they publish something and all you see is over, even sometimes the views are in excesses of 10, 20 million, sometimes even more than the adult population we have in Ghana. That should also tell you that the prominence or the notoriety of some of these publications have reached levels that they are so injurious that people who are affected by them or complainants will be forced to choose the most biting measures to address some of these publications or infringements.
Okay.
Because Samson, take it from me, even from someone from my generation, I can confidently tell you that maybe 2 decades ago, we didn't have anything like something going viral. If it had to do with the traditional media alone and journalists who operate within that space, at least they have some editorial policy, they have something which has to do with verification and all that. Samson, seriously, if you look at the regime today, that is not what's happening. People can merely just go to someone's tweet, pick the tweet and make a story out of it and retransmit, and it's all over the place. And for all you know, it will find its way.
It's refreshing to hear you say, Fati, that personally you support the repeal of these laws that Justice Dennis Ejie referred to as the two sister ugly laws of libel.
But Samson, please, those are not my words. Let me remind you.
No, I didn't say those are your words. I didn't say those are your words. I refer to Justice Dennis Ejie. He is the one who describes them in the manner I just referred to. He describes them as the two ugly sisters of criminal libel. Now, you support that.
What I said was that I believe civil remedies are sufficient in dealing with journalists who publish false news.
So personally, you would want the two repealed.
Personally, I would want the two to be looked at. When I talk about being looked at or amended, what I'm talking about is that we are saying that it is not only journalists who are affected by these laws. if we are saying that there are instances that the only available solution is criminal action, how are we able to divorce the operations of journalists from the general laws that are supposed to affect, let's say, a pastor or imam?
So what will you say? What will you say that you have done? You have done in your office as the information ministry to engender some, or to sort of give advice for police or the security to avoid the abuse that they are engaged in, particularly using these two laws?
Samson, let me remind you of one thing before I submit to your question. The police have a mandate, and that is law enforcement. If there are laws sitting in our statute books and people have confidence in it to walk to the police station to write complaints with respect to those laws, it will be unfair that when they implement those laws, the lawmakers like Honorable Okujeto, the executive like myself, and other stakeholders will now turn around and say, why did you implement those laws? I believe that will be a way that we are sharing responsibilities.
There are laws that have been passed in this country that are not in operation, because the executive takes the view that they shouldn't be operational at this time, or for some reason we shouldn't even operate them. The question is, somebody makes a publication about the first family, somebody makes a publication about a businessman, someone makes a publication about the first lady and so on, and they get arrested by the police. Can the government, through the information ministry at least, be heard to say something about that?
Samson, it's a double-edged sword. And let me remind you that even in Sule's submission, he admitted that the Ministry of Information has responded in a recent incident. Let me tell you that when there is any such infringement, the minister and myself and other management team members at the Ministry of Information are also among the people who do not sleep until we are able to reach those individuals, have a conversation about whether they will need any assistance in terms of medical help, and whether they intend to prosecute, to open the necessary windows and give them the confidence that the government has no interest whatsoever in shielding any perpetrators, and they are at free will to choose an action if they so desire. That being said, the Ministry of Information has assisted the NMC to initiate the Office of the Coordinated Mechanism of the Safety of Journalists. I must quickly add that the operations are also limited due to some financial challenges that on several platforms I have also advocated that.
Has this been operational at all?
Yes, it has. It has.
What can you update us what it has done?
Oh, that was one of the mechanisms that was used in resolving the Kalepuda case, if you remember. And it is not, at least to the best of my knowledge, I believe about 3 incidences were referred to the office, and then they were able to verify and also interrogate and brought finality to those issues. But Samson, that being said, the reason why I said it's a double-edged sword is that when it comes to advocacy for the safety of journalists, we are not at odds, we are allies. We join all the other stakeholders in the public sensitization that when a journalist breaches their duty, or when there is a display of unethical or unprofessional attitude, there are remedies like defamation under civil law if you so desire to pursue it. If you also want to file a complaint, you can also file a complaint to the National Media Commission if you are an institution and said that you are unable to pursue the remedy of defamation under civil law. We have encouraged this and publicly joined the other stakeholders in such advocacy. Okay. But I am saying that the issue about looking at Section 208 of the Criminal Offences Act and Section 76 of the Electronic Communications Act is not an event, it's a process. This government has a history as a tradition that indeed repealed the criminal libel law. In this administration that has received so much bashing, this administration introduced and passed and implemented the RTI. And this administration is capable of doing more. So what ought to be done is for our continuous collaboration in finding solutions and encouraging us, and sometimes also bringing a template. If we say that, okay,
this
these
administration
laws must be amended or repealed,
right.
something. What are we supposed to do?
All right.
We
Thank
are
you.
supposed to find allies.
Thank you. Let me